everybody, welcome back to the Canvas series for the first episode of season 2. Beyond excited to have you here, and you're going to see why. So in the first 6 or 7 minutes, I'm going to take some time to walk you through what to expect in this new season, right? Our renewed focus, who it's targeted for, who we're going to interview, the type of questions we're going to unpack, and what all of this is going to mean to you. And then in the following 20 minutes or so, I'm going to do a quick interview. I'm going to interview the latest member of our team, Ethan Kim. And he definitely fits the profile of what we call a busy person, a side hustler, someone who's multifaceted, someone who's got a lot of different priorities in their life, and someone who wants to create predictable outcomes across all of those priorities. And you're going to quickly understand why that's our focus and why that matters to us. Some housekeeping items before we get into it. The week after we launch this episode, I'm also going to do a quick episode where I walk you through our latest branding and strategy, right? Behind the scenes, we've been doing a lot of work preparing for this launch. We've, rebranded, refocused, really thought deeply about who it is that we want to serve, what we want to give you, and what is our strategy to successfully deliver that value for you. And I want to make sure you understand all that. At the end of season 1 on episode 18, I, really hone in on this notion and this thesis that the principles of success are universal, but how they are applied is personal, right? And we plan on really testing and delivering that thesis and notion with systems, right? Designing processes, tooling, and our environment around us to help you create predictable outcomes in your life across the different priorities in a way that works for you. So, please let us know what you think, right? This is something we've been doing behind the scenes, as I mentioned, and I really appreciate your feedback. You are our number one priority, and I want to make sure that after every episode you listen and you tune in, that you can walk away with something and you can apply that in your life in such a way that creates value for you. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, the Canvas series, on your favorite app, as we have a lot of announcements and a lot of content coming your way in 2019. Thank you and enjoy. All right, so what is the new season of the Canvas series all about? Right, so I'm going to do a quick introduction in terms of where our focus is going to be and what this is going to mean to you as our listeners. Right, so at the end of season 1 for episode 18, we did a lot of thinking, right? We went back to all the reviews, we went through all of our DMs and inboxes and, all the feedback that we accumulated over season 1, really. And we really asked ourselves the question, right? What are the things that we want to keep that adds value, and what is everything else we can get rid of? Right, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out episode 18. I would even say, pause right now and listen to episode 18, because we walk through everything that we've learned, the underlying principles that we really picked up from the guests that really makes the foundation of the season going forward, and we walk through the process, which will help you understand why we're taking this focus going forward. So going forward, the show will still be a monthly show. We'll still be interviewing a guest. But these guests are individuals who I call busy people, right? These are side hustlers. These are people who have a lot of things going on in their life, and they have priorities beyond their career, right? They care about their work, they care about their health, their relationships, their own personal development, their involvement in the community, and they're very multifaceted, right? And the underlying question we're going to ask and really address is, how do they stay on top of everything and still create meaningful results in all the things that matter to them? So if you've ever asked someone the question, where do you find the time to do all of that? Or how do you juggle everything? This is going to be perfect for you, right? And we're going to take a journalistic and investigative approach to this, right? We're going to really dig into and understand what keeps them so busy and how have they designed systems in their life to help them stay organized, to stay on top of everything, and to create those results. Whether it's some combination of habits and routines, right? So processes, or the use of calendars and journals and reminders, right? So, technology and tooling, or how they've surrounded themselves with the people and environment that best optimizes their performance, right? And, if you are someone who is constantly trying to stay afloat, if you're constantly looking for new methods and life hacks and ways to keep organized and still create results, this is definitely something you want to listen to, right? And, you're not alone, right? This is a massive problem, right? Our society has never been busier and more complex. The days of just going to work and going home, I'm sure those still exist for a lot of people, but not for you, right? You probably have a blog. You might also be doing a podcast. You might be doing some social media. You might have a photography hobby. You might be, teaching Zumba classes. You're probably doing a lot of different things, managing a lot of different priorities, and you're very multifaceted, right? And the question is how? How can we better optimize ourselves, our tooling, our processes, our environment? How do we use all that in such a way that we can still create results and outcomes across all of these priorities and not necessarily let one completely drop, right? And, building on that, the fact that, you and I, we're all busy people, one of the principles we're really going to abide by is we're going to keep it nice and tight and succinct. Right? We're going to focus on learning. We are learning with you, right? I want to know what these guests are doing, how they're designing systems in their life to really get those outcomes, and I want you to learn with us. And lastly, one of the principles that we're really going to prioritize is to make sure you get to think. Right? One of the underlying takeaways, and now is the principle that unites us as a team and company, is this idea that the principles of success are universal, but how they are applied is personal. And we intend on getting into that personal side in this season of the show. We want to understand how everybody's personally staying focused, setting goals, self-reflecting, practicing the right mindset, right? All of those principles, they're no secret to you, right? I mean, we all know what those success principles are, but how they're applied, how we make it work for ourselves, and, given our unique circumstances, given our unique priorities, given our unique environment, is what we really want to unpack in this show, that how, right? So to quickly summarize again, this is still going to be a monthly show. We're still going to interview guests. We're going to interview busy people, taking a more journalistic approach to things. We're going to address the question how, and this is for busy people such as yourselves. So we're going to keep it tight and succinct. We're going to bring you on the ride as we learn about how these people are using systems, and we're going to make sure that you get to think and apply and think about truly how can you apply these systems in your life. So I'm beyond excited, as you can tell, to kick off this season. We have a lot of things on the go. I would really appreciate your feedback on this point of view and this renewed shift in focus, and let us know, right? Let us know how can we make sure that we create as much value as we can in your life. Thank you. All right, Ethan, thank you so much for jumping on the first episode of Season 2 of the Canvas series, man.
Of course, thanks for having me.
No worries. And for everyone listening, Ethan's the newest member on the team, so super excited to give you guys an example of what to expect for this show in this upcoming season, and more importantly, to jump into your life, right? I mean, you have so much on the go, and I'm always fascinated by all the things you're trying to juggle and whatnot. So I think it's a good opportunity for the listeners to get to know who you are and get to know a little bit about your story, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, why don't we jump into it, right? Tell me a little bit about yourself, and what is keeping you so busy in life right now?
So I guess we'll do a quick intro. So my name's Ethan. I'm a fourth-year student at U of T. I'm studying neuroscience and molecular biology. I know it's a mouthful. It's definitely a lot to take in. So basically what I study is brains and kind of how they work and how the cells work. So what keeps me busy in life? So I have a lot of different priorities in terms of schoolwork, part-time jobs, part-time projects. So in terms of school, I'm taking a full course load this year, as well as doing my honors thesis, which is for my fourth year research project. And then in terms of side projects, I just joined Raf and Alex on the Canvas series, as well as other projects that you'll be hearing soon about. I also have my own show that I'm currently doing. It's basically an interview with profs to see how students and profs can interact better together instead of having this boundary between them that makes it really hard for them to interact. And then I also volunteer. I have a part-time job as a receptionist at a student residence. And yeah, just trying to keep up with friends and family and other obligations. And it's a lot to kind of take care of, but I guess the one thing that really keeps me motivated is that when I look at myself a few years ago, actually, when I first started university, I don't think I could have imagined myself being at this kind of place where, I'm juggling 5, 6 different things in my life, and I'm trying to work out more, and, keep myself healthy, have a sleeping schedule.
Aren't you also volunteering and stuff as well? Or?
Yeah, so I'm just starting to volunteer, hopefully after my orientation gets through, with a long-term care home for patients with dementia, which is also part of my course. So yeah, I have a lot of different priorities juggling on, but I remember myself in first year thinking, how am I gonna juggle school and a lot of different other priorities, like how am I gonna keep up with friends, how am I gonna keep up with eating properly. I couldn't have imagined myself, but bit by bit, I guess I started to implement systems into my life where I could be accountable for myself as well as for the goals I wanted to keep.
Mm-hmm. So walk me through some of those systems, right? You've definitely outlined a lot of different things that you do. You alluded to how you didn't know how to juggle all these priorities, how to stay on top of them. And I imagine, across all of these dimensions, you don't really have one in particular that you want to drop, right? I'd imagine you want to do well in all of these things, whether it's your grad school applications, your lab work, your podcasting, so on and so forth. So how do you stay on top of everything? How do you make sure you don't let things slip through the crack? And how do you make sure you manage your time and your energy and your mental health properly?
So, disclaimer, there are definitely times when I let things crack. It's, I'm not perfect. I don't imagine anyone is. And if you are, props to you. But for myself, I guess I have a few backup systems in place where, first of all, I like to outline my week on the last day. So on Sunday nights, I'll kind of sit myself down and look at my upcoming week and kind of see, on Monday I need to do that, Tuesday I need to do that, Wednesday I need to do that. That way I have a good kind of overview on what my week will look like. And then every day, in the morning or something, I'll look at my day and kind of see, I have 4 things to do. And these are 4 things that I need to get done by today, and I'll start to prioritize. So, if my applications are due today by 12 p.m., I'll finish those. If I have a part of my research project that I need to have done by Monday night, then I'll prioritize that later. So that way I can always kind of look and plan ahead so that if I happen to have an off day, then I can say, hey, I can do this today, maybe tomorrow I can offload some of my work to different other days so that I can make up for the tasks that I couldn't do on a previous day.
So where do you track this? Do you keep all this in your head? Once you do your planning on Sunday, do you have an agenda or a notebook, or personally for me, I am obsessed with using my calendar, right? So I use my calendar when I plan on my Sunday nights, and I kind of figure out things I need to put in. I also tie in the use of Trello, right? Our Trello board that we use for the project. I also have one for my own personal stuff as well, and I basically effectively translate those cards into my calendar, and then every day I iterate through it, right? Because I don't know about you, but for me, it's on Sunday, I have a rough idea of what my Friday might look like, right? I have every intention of hitting the gym at 6 a.m., right? That's kind of my Friday morning workouts. I don't skip those. So there's certain things that are kind of the non-negotiables and the things I don't skip, but how my day plays out, what I do when I get home, there's so many variables that I can't really anticipate fully what's going to look like on Sunday, right? So each morning I also make that effort to revisit what I had planned and iterate as I need to. Do you have a similar kind of thought process with that?
Yeah, so back to what I said about I leave myself a little bit of space to replan out my day. So I do use a calendar. It's kind of religious at this point. It has my school schedule, it has my work schedule, it has a lot of different schedules on it. And then I also have an agenda for kind of the more smaller things that I might not think about. So, I have my day-to-day planned out, but maybe I want to go grab lunch with someone. Then I'll put that in my calendar, highlight it so that I know, 12:30 you're eating lunch with whoever. And then the next day you have...
I'm sorry, to clarify, when you say highlight, what do you mean by that?
So,
do you color code your calendar?
I don't color code, but I'll star it, I'll kind of make it bolded so that it pops out.
Yeah.
Highlighting is a good idea actually, but I don't particularly use colors. Although I like to use colors, it's something that I found hard to upkeep for myself. That I would sometimes run out of ink, or I would couldn't find the color for some reason, might have lost it in my backpack. So when that got kind of it puts me off the same kind of familiarity that I didn't have, then it would throw me off and I'd kind of get frustrated or panicked. So I found that just by using pen, pencil, and paper, and just highlight it by lots of stars or boldening my words, then it could really just pop out to me instead of being reliant on color.
And I must admit, when you were talking about your calendar for the first maybe minute or two, I just automatically assumed it was a digital calendar. Mm-hmm. And maybe because my whole life is so centered around technology, I just assumed this guy's using a digital calendar. No, but you mean a physical calendar that you carry out. So what happens if you lose it, right? And do you find that one of the main benefits I find with having a digital calendar is that you can set reminders and notifications, right? And I'm very strategic about when I need certain things to remind me. If it's a social event, I typically want to get reminded the day before, just so I mentally remember, right, tomorrow night I got this event. Versus my creative time, if it's pretty habitual, I actually don't need a reminder because I just know at 7 a.m. this is what I'm going to do. But with the physical one, you don't have those benefits. So do you find that not having these real time or tactically utilized reminders, do you find that puts you at a bit of a disadvantage?
A little bit. So what I've been doing is that I have my school and work calendar on Google Calendar, so that I have always a backup regardless of what's going to happen. But in terms of actually important day-to-day things, I remember better when I write things down. That's also something that's been proven. There's been a few studies where if there's a golden rule in Neuro where it's called repeating. I can't remember the word per word saying, but essentially it's you're more likely to remember it if you repeat it. So take for example, if you're practicing piano, you'll need to constantly repeat and practice and repeat and practice for those things to stick. Same with studying. You won't remember everything just by reading over your textbook. You'll kind of need to contextualize it and put it into your brain in a format where you remember it with association for other things. Mm-hmm. So for me, I like to talk to myself. I know it sounds really weird, but I'll talk to myself when I study, and that way it's I'll associate what I hear with the words on the page. So when I write my day-to-day kind of things on my calendar, it'll kind of physically remind me that, hey, I have something to do tomorrow, something to do the next day. That's why I like to go over those things in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I don't really like to bring it around with me per se, because if I lose it somewhere, I'm kind of screwed. But I'll basically have a hard copy of it at home. And then if I really need something reminded, then I'll put it on my phone. That way I do have somewhat of a digital backup per se.
Makes sense. And just building on this theme of writing things, right? So I've definitely heard of this before. I think that's why, one of the reasons why the bullet journal is such a hot and trending, product right now, and when it comes to productivity, is because not only is it flexible, but it gives people an outlet to write and be creative and articulate themselves, and people love that. And I know, I definitely still have a journal on the side, the odd times I do want to write. But so, in addition to planning, right, when it comes to physically writing things down, what about keeping track of your progress and knowing when you've finished certain things? Do you write that back into your journal as well?
Yeah. So after every week, I'll kind of look back at all the progress that I've made and do kind of a reminder that, hey, it might have been a long week or it might have been a short week, but here's all the things that you've gotten done. And it gives me a bit of satisfaction to be able to check things off on a checklist. I don't know about you, but it's just like a physical reminder that, hey, I got this done. And just like being able to cross it out or do a check mark just actually makes me really happy. And
there must be something with the brain that can explain that, no? Like I must imagine by physically ticking something off or crossing it off or whatever it is that you get a sense of satisfaction that might be related to serotonin or some sense of like accomplishing a reward, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? I'm so curious. Like, there must be something there.
So as far as I'm aware, I'm not too well versed in the specific circuitry, but it's a general kind of the buzzword of dopamine is like everywhere. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's made by the brain. It's a hormone that essentially, if people are familiar with it, it's kind of called like the feel-good hormone. So when we predict a reward, dopamine kind of gets released. It's a good predictor of reward. So when we take off something, let's say from a checklist or whatever, I imagine that dopamine kind of gets released as a reward experience. It's not necessarily the same thing as, if you eat sugar, it feels good. It releases the same kind of dopamine, but I imagine it uses a slightly different pathway in the brain. I'm not entirely sure as to what, but yeah, like there has to be some sort of circuitry in your brain that modulates that pleasure, this feeling of satisfaction. Same thing with when we when we hit a milestone for careers or even for let's say weight loss, or weight gain or muscle gain or muscle loss, etc. When you have those kind of goals in mind, you set this checkpoint of this is when I'm happy or this is when I'm satisfied, and that will probably get translated into the brain as some sort of reward. So that's why it's kind of easier for when you're making a list. It's much easier to have smaller goals to check off more continuously and have a really far-reaching goal that you might never really end up reaching. That's what I do actually, where I like to set smaller goals in my weekly calendar, and then for my monthly or yearly, I'll have more far-reaching goals that I know probably won't be very achievable, but that way I'll have something to aspire for, something that I can always look forward to. And then once I look back on it week by week, and then by month, and then by quarter, by half a year, by year, I can kind of look back at all those check marks and say, this is what I've done this year. And that kind of keeps me going, I guess. Like, I want to have more check marks. I want to cross more things off my list.
Yeah. I find I have a very similar kind of setup, but when it comes to the annual goals, these are more of your long-term, year, long aspirational type goals. And then on a weekly level, instead of having specific goals I try to tick off, I think on a weekly basis I strive for momentum and velocity, right? So as you see, same thing with our Trello board, on a weekly basis I aim to get a certain amount of tasks done, and I measure that not by the number of tasks or the number of hours I invested doing certain things, but the kind of points, and each task I kind of assign points based on complexities, some time factor as well, whatever it is, and I strive for that velocity, strive for that momentum. But on a day-to-day basis, much like what you mentioned, having those small and frequent tasks and goals that I can take off every single day is what really keeps me going every single day, right? So I find that in the morning I take some time to really think about, what would need to be true today? Like, what do I have to do today to be true such that by the end of the night, I can say that I won my day, right? And at the end of the night, when I reflect it, there comes that opportunity where it's like, can I take this off or can I not? And for the days I can take it off, it feels great. For the days I can't, it's really a reflection of like what happened, right? Like why, like what came up, and it's usually because something came up like unexpected that I couldn't anticipate that completely threw off my day, and I couldn't do those certain things, and that that forces me to better anticipate, right? To better plan, to better think through like what could happen. And the reality is, I don't win every day. That's not the goal. I don't think. Like I don't think that's even possible. But to win as many days as possible, to get those small, tight feedback loops is something that has really benefited me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So. Do you have any other systems that you think is worth sharing? Like, what about in terms of accountability? How do you aside from ticking things off and the sheer reward and pleasure you might get from it? Is there something in the form of a punishment or a cost or some way to hold you accountable?
So I personally don't really believe in, I guess, punishing yourself for a cause that you didn't meet. Mm-hmm. I think there is an intrinsic value in when you have things written down that you want done, so like our checklist. And I think from my experience alone, not being able to tick that off is kind of punishment, quote unquote punishment enough, where I couldn't accomplish something for that day that I thought was possible. Then, like you mentioned, I kind of reflect on what happened, what were the factors going into this. If it was significant enough, I'll note it down in my notebook so that I know for the next week or whatever, I can always look back and say, today I wasn't as productive because blank. I couldn't do this because blank. Or, maybe there was something that popped up that was really personal. Maybe you got really sick. Maybe there was, relationship issues or work popped up that was unavoidable, stuff like that. And I think there's more value in the learning experience from how you weren't able to complete your task, rather than punishing yourself and saying, you screwed up today, so tomorrow you have to do double the work. That doesn't make sense, because not only does that make you more stressed in the long term, but it also, I feel, doesn't really help your productivity the next day, because you're going in with the thought that, oh my god, like I have to do so many things tomorrow, I didn't do that yesterday, I didn't do that from the week before, and all I have to do is blah, 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 blah. And it kind of puts you into this negative downward spiral where you're not able to reflect on what you feel and what you've done, but rather it makes you reflect on your failures. And that's never a good mindset to go into.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So why don't we jump into the fire round of questions here?
For sure.
Just let me know what the first thought comes to mind. What is one book that you recommend everyone to read?
There's a book by Eric Kandel, who's a famous neuroscientist. I think it's called In Memories Of. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember too well. But basically, it's kind of a book that talks about how neuroscience came to be like a huge field with like cognitive neuroscience and behavioral and et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in neuroscience, that's a great book to go to.
What is one productivity tool you cannot live without?
Google Calendar.
What is one decision that has made a profound impact on your life?
Wow, that's kind of a hard question. One decision that really made a profound impact on my life. Moving to Toronto.
Last question. What is one actionable piece of advice you have for all the busy people listening to the show?
Always reflect on what you've done and never dwell on your mistakes. Always strive to learn from them and never really punish yourself for the things that you couldn't have done.
Awesome. Thank you, man.